I'll be your host for this afternoon's program. With me is Dr. Tracey Severns. Dr. Severns is a longtime educator, former chief academic officer for the New Jersey Department of Education. But she started as an aide in the school district and worked her way up and probably has had more positions than anything else. But I do want to say we're here to discuss her book, Mistakes, Missteps, and Missed Opportunities. This comes from her mistakes, from her experience in the school districts. I found it fascinating. I think you're going to find we're going to pick out just a couple of her stories. There's plenty of stories there, and I think you can all relate to them. So, Tracey, I'm going to talk to you first. Why? I mean, and why this title?
Well, for many years, I've had a goal to write a book. I've experienced many things on the road, from an aide in a classroom for children with special needs to a teacher, vice principal, superintendent, chief academic officer, director of student performance. I witnessed so many things and had the opportunity to learn from so many people that many people ask me, like, where's your book? You need to write your book. And I struggled for so many years because I found it difficult, off-putting, and even it felt a little arrogant to write a book that sought to teach others how to be better leaders through these kinds of portraits of perfection or success stories, knowing how flawed I am, how I've witnessed others to be. And so the idea occurred to me when I was at a conference and I watched the presenters kind of strutting around the stage, presenting on how they solved the problem as if it all unfolded so perfectly. And I know that the real world is messier than that. And I had this epiphany that what if, instead of trying to teach lessons of leadership through perfection and these stories of success, I took a different approach and shared those times that we've messed up, when we've made mistakes, because it is really in those times that I think we learn the most. And when I sat down to do that, it came so fluidly. It just was, it was so much easier and it felt so much more honest to write.
Mm-hmm. So the title, Mistakes, Missteps, Missed Opportunities, it's not just mistakes. So
right.
Tell me a little bit about the title. I mean, we all can relate to mistakes.
Mm-hmm.
I've even made a couple.
Not you.
Well,
I don't believe it. I don't.
Ask my wife.
Yeah.
But tell us about the title.
So when I think about errors, I think there are really three types that when we reflect back on our career, we can think about the various sources or ways that they occurred. So for me, a misstep is when you're brand new in a position. You have never walked that path before. You've never done that job. And so sometimes, just because we're new and, if you will, naive in the best of sense, we might make a poor choice. We might make a bad decision. But again, it comes from being brand new. A mistake, unlike a misstep, is when you should have known better, but you didn't do better. You've had that experience. You've walked that path before, and yet you made a choice that wasn't in the best interest of the situation, the circumstance, or the individuals involved. So mistakes and missteps are similar in that the leader has regrets over choices that they made, actions that they did. A missed opportunity is different. A missed opportunity is when there is regret around what we didn't do, the choice we didn't make, the invitation we didn't accept. So the missed opportunity lies in those times where we look back and say, I wish I had done, I wish I had responded. I wish I had acted. So the regret is about almost an omission rather than an action.
The other, so I'm going to go through a few of the stories. There's a lot of stories here. We can't cover all.
62.
62. Okay. But a couple of them I thought are pretty big picture. One's about competition. We're Americans. We think competition solves everything. I've seen educational reforms where we compete school districts against school districts.
Yes.
Superintendents may want to compete schools against schools, and we think that will incentivize our staff.
Yes.
That was one of the things that you saw.
Yes. That I've found that sometimes superintendents or boards or just the public looks at the performance of schools and at the performance of schools in a way that is focused on competition, where we at times, particularly at the elementary level, this is most common at the elementary level because of all the levels of schooling, high schools, middle schools, elementary schools. There are often multiple elementary schools, even when there's a single middle school and a single high school. So it's not uncommon, in my experience, for superintendents to present the outcomes of elementary schools in ways that pit them against each other rather than incentivize collaboration. What we need to realize is competitors don't often collaborate. When you are the principal of the elementary school that's at the top of the leaderboard, you are not incentivized to share the secrets of your success with your colleagues because you like it at the top. So what happens is that people then kind of keep those to themselves. They hoard those. They're not as willing or eager to share what's advancing the achievement of the youngsters in their school when they know at the end of the day there's going to be 4 graphs comparing the 4 elementary schools. They want to be the highest bar. So we need to realize the inadvertent effects of creating competition. Another way to do that is to say that I win when we win. And so even if you were to say that the elementary schools are going to work together to see as a group how they can optimize growth, perhaps that could be compared to the middle and the high school who work together to optimize growth. Now we have kind of a competition, if you will, but it also inherently incentivizes cooperation. People are sharing strategies that work in a way that advances the whole district.
I totally agree with you because I have always noticed that competition, you always want to win.
Mm-hmm.
So why give up any secret? In fact, it's incentivized not to
Yes.
at all levels, not just the top level. I think everyone wants to be on the winner. So I love that. That was why I picked that lesson out.
Mm-hmm.
The other one, you had the trust equation, which, we're all when I work with districts and all the time, trust is like really important.
Yes.
And if you don't have trust, it's hard to do any of the other stuff that we're trying to do.
Yes.
So talk about the trust equation, because I think that's something that we can all learn about.
Yes. So relational trust is the foundation of all other things. All the work that we seek to do, all the projects, the initiatives, all of the ways we come together to achieve anything needs to be based on a foundation of trust. What I found to be so helpful was when I came upon the trust equation by Meister, Green, and Galford. And what those authors did is they said the trust is what they said is that in every interaction, people are unconsciously calculating trust, the degree to which I should be able to trust your words, deeds, and actions. And what they said is that unlike that being based on one thing, it's really a quotient that includes 3 factors in the numerator and 1 in the denominator. Now, don't worry, this is not going to get into deep math here. What it's about is this. The authors suggest that in every interaction, people are considering 4 things. So first is credibility. They're seeking to decide whether they should believe the other person. Do I think this person knows what they're talking about? Do I see them as credible? Not just in words, but could they act on what they're saying? So credibility, do I think you know what you're talking about? Reliability is dependability and consistency, the ability to believe that the person's going to show up in the way that they say, that you can count on the promises that they make, that they will in fact act in ways that they say they will. The last item in the numerator is intimacy. Intimacy is, do I believe you know me? It's that idea of believing that you can share even some uncomfortable truths about yourself. It's the way that people, for example, like when we got together today, when you said, "How's your daughter?" Like, I feel known. I feel that you remember. I feel that we connect. So it's in all those ways when we care about each other as people that we elevate trust. So in the numerator, then we're adding credibility. Can I believe you? Reliability. Can I count on you? Intimacy. Do you know me? And it's all added up and divided by self orientation, which is the degree to which I believe that this conversation or this exchange is really about you or me. And you could probably think of some experiences or interactions where someone was talking with you and they're saying, "Look, Ray, this is really for you. I'm trying to help you out." And your gut is telling you, "You know, I think this is really about you. You're saying it's about me, but I think it's about you." What I loved about this equation is it helped me think about ways that I could intentionally increase the factors in the numerator and decrease the denominator. How can I work to build credibility, to be consistent, reliable, dependable, to engage with people in ways that says, "I see you, I hear you, I know you, I respect you," and then make sure that they believe that this exchange is truly about you. And many times we think of trust as this one amorphous thing. That how do we build trust? It's like, where do we even start? The trust equation helped me think of it as four distinct things that we can work on very intentionally and really achieve greater levels of trust in relationships.
Yeah, when I read through that, I could see a lot of relation. We look at it as one thing,
Yes.
but breaking it down, saying, you know what, I didn't really do this part.
Mhm.
I wasn't reliable. I didn't show up on time. And sometimes some people are very professional and they don't want to do any of the intimacy.
Yes.
And so there's a wall that goes up
Mhm.
there. So to me, I thought that was fascinating and something that we could all work on.
Yes.
The other thing was sometimes there, there's an educational reform put out there, and educators will say, "Well, if I do that, I can't do this."
Yes.
And like I can only do one thing, and and you say they look at or it's either or, but not and.
Yes. 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 So Ray, I say to people all the time, meet me in the land of and, in this beautiful place where we really can do two things at the same time. And I learned of this from Jim Collins in his book Good to Great. Jim Collins talked about tyranny of the or and the genius of the and. Um, the challenge with the genius of the and is it requires that we are able to hold in the mind two seemingly opposite ideas. So the challenge, for example, is, do we believe that in schools we can address rigor and relationships, that we can have policies and practices that take good care of teachers and students, that we can address standards and promote smiles where it can feel good and we can work hard. What I have found is that in this increasingly polarized society, we view things as very bifurcated, as this false choice that we have to do this or this. When I believe that many times, most times, we can do things together, that we have ways to weave them into a coherent narrative, a unified work stream, and it is possible to address both at the same time.
Let me just do a little follow up on that. So I think a lot of administrators might get that from the staff.
Mhm.
And so how would you administrator maybe deal with that and just come back and say, I hear you, but I think we can get to both.
So, one of the things that I have found is to a mistake that sometimes leaders make is they present initiatives as discrete and disconnected efforts. And then people hear them as, this is too much, it's too hard. We have this and this and this. When in fact, many times those things are inherently connected. That we can talk about SEL, right, social emotional learning, and in the context of rigorous instruction. So, for example, we can use the characters from or figures from history to talk about perseverance and challenge. We can talk about the characters in the novels or the stories that kids are reading. We don't have to have a separate class called SEL or character education. When we look for the humanity, when we look at the real people we're already learning about, and just draw out those traits, those characteristics, we truly can live in the land of and. So what I say to leaders often is that when you're presenting your district or your school's initiative, do not present them as separate buckets, but create a composite portrait of how all of these things are woven together. And when addressed in this connected way, that we can do multiple things at the same time.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought up SEL, because that was what came to my head. Is people say, I have to do the academics, I can't do the SEL, and it's like, well, they are connected.
Yes, yeah. Think about all of the think about, when it comes to in science and social studies and health and phys ed, in every course and class we teach, there is a written record of the field. There is a narrative. There are people. There are lessons to learn that relate beautifully to SEL. That if you were to lay curricula next to each other, you could easily find many connections. You can build a bridge from those two courses so that you don't have to do them separately.
I'm going to switch gears a little bit, but
Mhm.
you switch gears in this book all the time.
Yes, I
Every
do.
chapter is totally different.
Yes.
But what goal setting?
Yes.
You talk about goals, and I know when districts do, but even schools, when they look at goals, they usually look at where they're not I'm not going to use the word failure, but they're not performing as good. And you talk about the terminology of the goal setting shouldn't be about less failure,
Hmm.
and how important that is.
Yes. I mean, think about, and reflecting back, this is a regret that I have and a mistake I believe that I made when I worked at the State Department. That many times when we worked with schools in need of improvement, we encouraged them to find the areas in which kids were struggling and to set goals to improve performance. Unfortunately, many times those goals were written in a way that sought to mitigate or minimize failure rather than increase success or proficiency. And there was a great book that I read called Nine Lies About Work. And the authors talk about how much more motivating it is to succeed more than, I'm going to go out on a limb here, Ray. I'm going to say something moderately inappropriate. Okay, no, don't worry.
Don't worry, I'm not listening.
Don't worry.
I'm not listening to you.
But, right, is it more, let me put it this way. Is it more motivating to succeed more or suck less? Right? You never have seen cheerleaders. Have you ever seen cheerleaders on the sidelines at a game saying, suck less? Yes, suck less.
Well, my football team wasn't that good when I was in high school, so they might have done that.
They would, right? What do we say?
No.
Right?
Yeah.
SUCCESS. Success. Like, people, think about when we raise money, that thermometer thing that people, we want to raise the good. We want to raise the good. It's very dispiriting to say that we want to take, if I don't know, 57% of students are not on grade level in a particular subject, that the goal is to reduce the failure to 42%. Think of that. That aspiration still has built into it an accepted degree of failure. And what we're trying to do is do something less, do more of a good thing than less of what you don't want.
And that's kind of human nature again, where it's more incentive to be positive.
Yes, yes, yes.
Yeah.
Right.
Because you're telling people they're a failure in the first one.
Exactly. That's what is so front loaded in, when those are phrased in that way, what we're reminding people of is what we have that we don't want instead of what we don't have that we do want. And it's really, it shapes the mindset. It shapes how we receive it shapes how hard we want to work towards something.
Okay. So your district's going through goal setting. Think about
Increase good.
that. And there's ways to do it. It could be the same goal.
It could be exactly the same goal.
It's just how you word it.
Right. So let's go to the 57%. So let's see, using the new math and the lattice method. So if there's 43% who are proficient, we want to increase that to, 60%. Right. We want to increase what we want, not decrease what we don't. And the same thing comes up with when we talk about, attendance. We don't want to reduce chronic absenteeism. We want to increase attendance. What do you want to happen? Let's seek to increase that.
Yeah, that's not a common mistake. The other one that you gave an example, not learning alongside, where, and this probably happens more than we would want to admit. A leader gets a professional developer, or someone like you, to come in, introduces you, then leaves.
Yes.
Or someone it can happen at any level. They can do a board retreat and the superintendent's not part of it. Or,
Yes.
So learning alongside someone.
Yes. So important. So, and in fact, when I was doing research so Vivian Robinson and her colleagues did research that sought to answer the question, what do leaders do that have the greatest measured impact on student outcomes? So we're looking at what leaders do to optimize student outcomes. And the number one factor, the greatest effect size, was in leaders who learn alongside. Leaders who are a part of the professional development or the learning experience. And if you think about that, let's say a district hires me to come in and do professional development on how to, optimize the performance of their professional learning communities, or how to use data to increase student outcomes, or anything. If you invite me in and give me a warm and wonderful introduction, and then sit in the back and then start checking the phone, it's like, ooh, something came up, I have to leave. What everyone in the room is aware when the leader leaves. Everyone in the room is looking around, noticing who's here and who isn't. And my question is, when I leave, after I have seeded the garden, Miracle Grow, watered it, once the garden is planted, which I will come and do during the time that I'm in your district, when I leave, who is going to tend the garden? Who's going to be able to nurture and support that initiative? If you didn't learn what it looks like, if you don't know the vocabulary, if you can't speak the language, if you can't support the behaviors, why did you have me in the first place? I mean, I was, in fact, so frustrated by the occasions in which I was invited in and the leaders didn't attend. I actually wrote it into my contract. I said, I won't come unless the leaders stay. And, so many times when I'm in places, yes, now, more of the principals stay, the supervisors and so forth. And I have to say, the superintendent needs to do their level best to be not just the instructional leader, but the instructional learner, modeling the humility of what it means to be curious, to be unsure, to learn something new, so that you can support it, so that you can act on it. Like you are setting an example by being in the room. And I know superintendents are busy, important people, and they can't be everywhere. And I've learned to replace the word but with and to the degree possible, you need to be where the learning is taking place.
I'm going to just do a quick follow-up on that one because there's 2 points that I take out of that. A, leadership's kind of visible. People do notice when you're not
Oh,
there.
absolutely.
And whatever
they
you're
talk
doing.
about it.
Yeah, and you can't be along with them if the teachers or staff or whoever the audience is if you don't know what they learned.
Yes. Yeah. No amount of, I could send you the slide deck, I could give you the packet, but if you didn't experience the whole, if you didn't hear and engage in those activities, how are you possibly going to support the work after? And as you said, everyone knows and everyone's talking about it.
So the other thing I want to talk to you about, getting towards the end a little bit, is you got this idea actually from a sixth grade teacher, part of the idea, but talk about that sixth grade teacher and then how it transcended to adults.
Yeah, there really was a twofold inspiration for the book. The one was at the superintendent conference and watching the people completely lose their audience because they were teaching from a place of perfection. And you know what, Ray? Perfection is, few people find it easy to relate to someone who purports that they're perfect. I mean, we often know of our fears, our flaws, our failures, if you will. So part of it came from that. And the other was working with sixth grade teachers who every Friday asked students to write in their journal the answer to this question. And it was the same question every week. It was, what was the most helpful mistake that you made this week? And it gave the students an opportunity to reflect back on the week and look at their mistakes or their missteps or their missed opportunities and consider what they might do better or differently going forward. What a powerful, wonderful human way to learn. And if you think about that, these are the great gifts. The errors that we make in life provide such an opportunity for learning that often lasts far longer than anything that went well or was easy. So the students would write in the journal, and then she would make it optional. It was an invitation if you want to share, but many times the kids were very forthcoming with things that they would have done better or differently in school or at home or on the sports field. So what was interesting is I decided to use that same activity with the mentees, with the brand new teachers. And what I found was a whole different level of caution about that, or concern. What do you mean? Like they were very reluctant to talk about it. There seemed to be a real level of discomfort. So we were saying to kids, oh, take risks, growth mindset, all this kind of stuff. But I found that adults weren't equally willing to embrace that same concept. And as you move up the educational ladder, principals, superintendents, they were even more reticent to talk about those things. And in doing the research for the book, what I found to be fascinating is books for adults about mistakes often refer to them as failures. Books for kids refer to them as mistakes. And what I want us to do is I want us to rethink the way we look at the times in life that we didn't do it perfectly, because we are human and we're learning.
Well, that brings us to the end, and that was a great little way to end it. I love that story that I know you had it in the book, and I enjoyed it. And I know that you had some self-reflection in this book,
Yes,
too.
a lot.
Looking back on things that you kind of regret that I think a lot of us would regret. So I'm going to make a recommendation if you want to get this book. I guess I'm Oprah right now.
It's it's on Amazon and through Youth Light Publishers.
Okay. I bought it on Amazon. It's very easy. Mistakes, Missteps, and Missed Opportunities by Dr. Tracey Severns. Thank you, Tracy.
Thank
As
you,
always,
Ray.
it's always fun to talk. And I'm
Appreciate
sure
it.
we'll talk again. She's been a friend with NJSBA for many years now. And I
See you
hope
at
you
workshop.
Hope you enjoyed it.